listening to the Shortbox podcast. I'm Tyler Olson.
I'm Matthew Murphy.
And we'll introduce everyone else soon. All right, so guys,
is that not what we're doing?
This is something new.
Kale's part of their team
new,
now.
as you can tell by our shitty intro. Me and Matt have been talking about this for a while. We have been planning to do a hopefully monthly kind of series on like graphic novels, because Matt loves graphic novels and trades and stuff like that.
And I hate fucking reading weekly, but I do it every fucking week.
And that. So we figured we'd get some people on the show to actually talk about some books. So this time, the first time, we're going to be doing probably a nice cheery book. Nice happy romp through outer space. Omega Men, written by Tom King, art by Barnaby, Bagenda, and Tim Burgess, I think, did an issue. But yeah, so let's introduce everyone.
We're here with the Comics Pals.
Yeah, Matt, you do that.
Yeah. So.
Hello.
Hey.
All right.
So
Introduce yourself, friends.
I want to say like go round robin, but I don't know if everyone has the same order of people as I do because I'm confused. Sean, you go first.
Hey, I'm Sean from the Comics Pals, and
Didn't even
I'm really
hesitate.
excited
He
to
was
talk
ready.
about some Omega Men.
He's our leader.
Our fearless leader.
He was the roundest of everyone in terms of his bubble, so I was just like, yes.
I'm Pete, also from the Comics Pals. Thanks for having us, guys.
He's our second leader.
Wait, okay, so when we were on the Comics Pals, you guys made us say who our waifus were. So I feel like we should do something for these intros.
Yeah, so I don't know what that means.
Okay, good, because I didn't either.
Great.
Let's Matt. Okay.
Wasn't waifu like your like fictional wifey?
Sure.
Yeah, basically.
Sure. All
yeah,
right. Let's start this over.
The
Sean,
super
Sean,
nerd
go
way
ahead.
To say
I
that.
want to kill myself for saying wifey out loud.
Wait till after the show, at least.
You probably want to kill yourself for a lot more reasons than just that.
True, I did read Trump erotica last night.
That's Kale. He's a curmudgeon.
Yeah. So okay. Let's force you guys to do the same thing we did. Sean, reintroduce yourself and say who your waifu is.
Sure, I'm Sean from the Comics Pals, and as anyone who knows me knows, it's Jean Grey.
Knew it.
Every day.
Know it? Gingers. Gotcha.
Ugh, gross.
Hey, what's that?
The feud continues off the main
Spread that love.
podcast.
All right, keep the beef on our show, boys. We're guests here. All right,
No fighting at other people's houses.
I'm Pete from the Comics Pals, and my comic book waifu is Adam Eve from Invincible.
Okay. All right. Matt, you don't get to say yours is Kellyanne Conway. Okay. All right? I wasn't gonna ask you. I knew you were about to say something. I'm stopping you there.
All right.
All right. Let's keep going.
I'm Kale from the Comics Pals, and I guess my waifu would be Lois Lane.
Okay.
All right,
I could
solid
see
choice.
that.
Classic.
I'm Phil from the Comics Pals, and I'm in a menage a trois with Kale and Lois Lane.
Okay.
Like Alan Moore.
That is an
I didn't-
image I will never
I-
be able to remove from my brain.
I didn't agree to that.
Kale didn't sign off on that, but I mean, Lois and I,
All right. And now, how do you feel about having to say waifu?
I don't like it.
I didn't say it.
Do you know how have you ever had like braised kale? It's got like a gritty, earthy taste to it. It kind of tastes like that. There's like sand in my mouth.
Wait, Lois Lane or saying the word waifu?
I
So, Kale, are you telling me that the sand is coarse and that it gets everywhere?
I was gonna say that. You son of a bitch.
Oh no.
I think I just shrunk 3 inches.
Height-wise or dick-wise?
Dick-wise.
On brand, guys. We're on brand today. Yeah. So the Omega Men. This was Matt. You want to get some history on this one?
That doesn't sound
So
like
this
it
book
does.
Well, okay,
was
you don't have to talk about like the Omega Men as a
No, but,
series,
this
because you just realize that this is one of only 4 different volumes of it or something.
I think
like
this is the 3rd volume, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
Right.
that sounds right.
So this volume came out with DC's DCU line, and it was one of the first books to get the axe, and they were like, we're cutting you off at 6 issues, guys. This isn't selling well. And then fans freaked the fuck out. We're like, no, we want the whole goddamn story. And then we got 12 issues of this fucking amazing book.
Yeah, so it's one of those weird instances where I guess Tumblr and Twitter Rage actually worked out, which is weird.
I know, and to say that Tumblr and Twitter couldn't save a comic book, couldn't stop Donald Trump is astounding.
Okay, so we're gonna get political right off the bat.
Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah, so this was DCU was DC attempting to reclaim readers after the New 52 was kind of becoming a mess.
Pander to the snowflakes, you mean?
Yeah. so like they relaunched a whole bunch of they had Dr. Fate was during this.
That was awesome. Starfire, Grayson.
Yeah, they tried some new things here, which I give them credit for, but at the same time they axed a lot of them real quickly. Like Prez was one of them. This was one of them.
Prez was amazing.
Yeah. Well, Matt
Wasn't the thing that Prez and Omega Men were both at the bottom of the sales charts?
Yep.
kinda.
That's exactly
yeah,
right.
kinda.
And yet they were both the two top
Best books
DC
of 2015.
Yeah.
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 I know they had all the critical acclaim, just not the sales, I guess.
Yeah, and originally like this idea of when I saw this book, I'm like, oh, Kyle Rayner's in it. There's the Green Lantern I care least about. He's always like, oh, he's a White Lantern. He likes art.
He stole Hal Jordan's wife, girlfriend, person.
Yeah, he's afraid of fridges. Like that's all.
With good reason, I might add. Though.
True.
Yeah.
True. And then I was just
Don't
like,
shit
all
on
right,
a
not
fridge
a
for
big
me,
deal.
dude.
But then everyone was telling me this book was amazing. Like I think you were one of them. I think like the guys from iFanboy were praising this book.
I just hopped on board because of Tom King. Like I was reading Vision at the same time. I only heard good things about Sheriff of Babylon, and then I heard they were a trilogy, and I was like, now I have to read the whole goddamn thing. So I'm still behind on Sheriff of Babylon, though.
Yeah, I have to start that one too. But then they can he greenlit a comic? They greenlit an additional 6 issues so Tom King could actually finish a story, which I am completely grateful for because I loved this book.
I mean, if they'd cut it at the first 6 issues, that would have been really disappointing. Because personally, I didn't think it really hit its stride until this, like the 6th or 7th issue.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that he had this bigger plan, where if he had actually been cut off before he can actually start forming that in the story, this would have been lackluster in a way. I mean, you have Barnaby Bagenda's art, which is phenomenal by itself. But I think this needed the full 12 issues to actually tell its story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, I think for me personally, all of the best parts of it were in the last 6 issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like, if those hadn't existed, I think it would have been a pretty forgettable series.
So Matt, you told me to read this. I think you were the one who actually like told me to buy this.
Yeah, I had it pre-ordered for like a few months, and then I just said fuck it, and I bought it from my local shop, and I read it in one sitting, and I felt the same way I did.
One sitting or one shitting?
One sitting. No toilet breaks were taken during the reading of this graphic novel.
That's good.
But I felt the same way I did after reading Grant Morrison's New X-Men. Like I felt like I needed to go for like a walk, and I needed like a breath. I needed to like just take in what I just read, because it was like something I've never read before. It was morally challenging, and it challenged me as a person, and to like change my perspective on like war, terrorism, and faith. Really.
Yeah, it touches on some light themes, I guess. But
The big thing with that book is it comes from Tom King's personal experience as a CIA operative in the Middle East, and he like clearly has mild PTSD, like he's talked about it in interviews before, and this book is like his expression of what he went through while he was deployed as an operative in the Middle East. And
with
you
aliens.
see like the moral grayness of everything.
Yeah, which I know Sheriff of Babylon is kind of like the real life approach to that, where this is putting it into a DC cosmic spin, which works very, very well. And I think having Kyle Rayner as the lead in this actually works wonders for this book.
Yeah, man, I completely agree there, and that's something that, to take it back to what you were saying before, I didn't feel that way at first.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like, in the first, 2 issues, I feel like he's really kind of just hanging out in the background,
Very,
it's not
very passive, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, all right, so, when's Kyle going to come into this, and what is his larger role here going to be? And, I think, by the end of it, I was really impressed by how much I thought he had done for the book, and how good a central character he was for this story specifically.
Yeah, and I
With
always
his whole relationship to all the emotions and everything.
Yeah, and I feel like Kyle's always been that character that's kind of in the background, at least for me, where he hasn't really ever gotten to the level of Hal or Jon Stewart, and I think that's what kind of made him work here. It's because I didn't really have so much of a background on him or a preconceived notion on who he was, so they kind of made him a clean slate here.
I mean, I'm definitely biased there because I'm just starting to get into DC stuff this month, actually, and this is the first book I've ever read where he was the lead character. So I kind of came in with a clean slate for him.
And he's not even the lead character, so.
Yeah, that's true.
He
Go ahead.
He clearly was on the forefront of the Volume 3 DC run in the late 90s. He was the Green Lantern. He was the guy. He had his own ongoing.
Yeah,
but
but
Justice League.
But what Pete's saying is he doesn't have that background.
No,
Yeah.
I know. I'm just saying it's not like it didn't exist. I mean, it was at some point.
I wouldn't even even in Jeff Johns' Green Lantern core run where he was a freaking player. He was Ion for a long time, and he still didn't matter. He played third string for Guy
Fourth.
and John.
Yeah,
Well, no,
it's
before
Hal
Hal,
was
okay.
in the main book.
yeah. I mean, it's Johns who wrote it. Who loves Hal.
Yeah. Even now, he just kind of. He was the last Lantern to be introduced in the Green Lantern book now. He was behind Simon Baez and Jessica Cruz. They don't give a shit about Kyle Rayner.
Which is why I like how he's in this. Yeah, and I mean, to say we're talking about Kyle Rayner in this, but this is really an ensemble book. Because the characters that are introduced in this they have real depth to them, even though one of them's just a Tiger Man, one of them's a robot. They're these kind of like archetypes, but
Wait, can
What
I
was
just?
the robot's name?
Doc.
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 Yeah.
Doc.
Did you guys read Primus the whole time and be like, this guy is definitely getting his master's in creative writing from NYU, and he is just preaching on Facebook about his moral views every day.
He reminds me a lot of this professor that I had in college who ended up being my boss briefly while I was a teacher, or kind of my boss, and very, very hippy dippy guy, in his 40s with pierced ears and long hippie hair, talking about literature and peace.
Who eventually has
But
to
then-
kill someone.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. So he is kind of the idea of passivity and then actually having to kill for war, and then you have
Right.
Brute, which is where you get to tackle faith a lot with Brute.
Also, rock version of Groot.
I am Brute.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little on the nose.
I think the thing, and that's one of the things I found really interesting about Omega Men as well, with Brute and Kyle Rayner specifically, is how it tackled faith and religion. Is that
Well, you coming from an Irish Catholic background.
yeah,
Let's talk about your emotions since you don't.
that actually cut really deep. No, I found it interesting that the whole time they're always looking for the third option because they have faith in Alpha and Omega, and then you have Kyle Rayner who's faith in God and justice in the American way. But at the end of the day, there is no there is no third option. It's
There's
life
no
or
middle
death.
ground. Yeah.
And
Right.
the abandonment of faith by Kyle dropping that cross in the body of the Viceroy. Fuck, man, cut me deep.
And then you
Yeah,
have
that was a heavy moment.
Yeah, and then you have like Scraps, which is another great character who was essentially a refugee that was taken under Primus's wing, I think it was.
No, it was Doc.
It was Doc's wing, yeah.
Yeah.
And-
She's great.
yeah.
She was my
She was
favorite
the breakout
character.
character.
Okay.
She was the breakout character.
Oh, actually, that's a good idea. Let's talk about our favorite characters then.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you,
Yeah.
Phil. I thought she was definitely a breakout character for the book. I thought her story was the most interesting by far. And I think to your point, Tyler, like the idea of her being a refugee who then is then kind of conscripted into this like freedom fighter organization and everything is like, when you really sit back and think about that, it's pretty heavy. And I think they played with that really well in a way that didn't feel exploitative.
Yeah, and then I actually like one of my favorite characters was Doc. The fact
I
that
agree.
Too.
yeah, because there wasn't much to him for most of the book, and then they showed how like he was like one of these robots that help destroy a planet, and this is him trying to, I guess, go against his programming and actually fight for something good, which I was like, oh, it's like Bastion from Overwatch, but
Right, yeah.
but I always like that theme of kind of like the robot who is trying to fight his programming to do something good.
Yeah.
And then he sacrifices himself here, which broke me. Matt, you look like you're having a flashback or something. How is Nam in your head right now?
It's Irish Catholic guilt.
No, because I was trying to think of my favorite character, and I'm kind of ashamed of it, but my favorite character is Callista.
I knew it.
No, she's a good
too.
choice.
It would
I
be.
knew
It
it.
would be.
I just
But no, she's a good choice. There's a lot of depth to that character.
a lot of
Yeah.
death, but crazy brunettes. I have a weakness.
Oh, boy.
Two,
I was gonna say, Matt, did you want her to squeeze your head between her thighs? Is that?
I just want her to choke me to death and then stab me with that sword like at least 5 times.
And step on your dick in some heels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But story-wise, I have to say that I like that she manipulated everyone.
Yeah.
Like the whole time she was manipulating everyone to become the new viceroy. Like she was all about freedom and power until she didn't need that anymore. She got everything
Oh,
wanted.
she was never about it.
Like she, in my opinion, is the real villain in the story.
I agree.
And I fucking
Yeah.
loved that because you were rooting for her the whole goddamn time.
And even when she does make that turn, you're kind of like, well, maybe like,
Yeah.
like you're not
Yeah.
like really totally against her either.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely got the read on her early though that she was not what she claimed to be. Just the way that she talked to everyone, that she kind of gave everyone exactly what she needed or what they needed from her to get what she wanted out of them, led me to believe that she was not really, that this cause wasn't their cause, it was her cause.
Yeah.
And not because she was the leader, because it was really for her, not about freeing the people. It's about making her the new head at the top of the pyramid.
Well, also, like, I don't know if I agree necessarily that she was, like, the main antagonist of the story. I think a big thing is that the Omega Men had a clear goal that they were trying to achieve, but, like, in any kind of revolutionary activity, it could be easily a slippery slope kind of thing. And you have someone like Primus or Primus, who is more, in the beginning, he's like, I'm a pacifist, and this is what I'm espousing. But with the nature of war, like, they... the morality of their ethical conduct grays very quickly, and so I don't know if it's a matter of her being like an antagonist or an evil character as much as like this, do the ends justify the means kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I feel like the end of it, where we are shown that she becomes, essentially the next viceroy. I mean,
Right.
like, I feel like that was her plan all along. I don't necessarily think it was like she had the best intentions and that war
Yeah.
made a monster of her.
Yeah.
I think that might be true of the other Omega Men. But
Yeah,
I think for her it was orchestrated.
Kale
I
and
think
Sean.
that's-
Gil?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say to bounce off Pete's point. Yeah, I think Primus especially we see as sort of a victim of this this conflict, sacrificing his morals and all that. I gotta say, I think for me, I gotta go with just the typical superhero answer. I related to Kyle a lot. Like, he's like wrestling with everything and wanting to come in and figure it out and put a stop to it as like the Green Lantern, peacemaker or whatever. And then like his like turning and realizing like what the greater good should be, and having to sort of sacrifice the greater good for the the immediate good.
Or the lesser evil.
Yeah, the lesser evil. Yeah, I think is like. I mean, that's our political system. Like,
topical.
We're gonna get to that in a bit. Actually,
I was gonna say I wanted to just jump off that real quick because I did think that there was an interesting theme that emerged in like I forget which issue it was, but the one where Kyle addresses the Galactic Council or what have you. And he makes that whole point of like there being the third option, the right way, the American way. Did anybody else get like a vibe of him like being representative of Americans inserting themselves in foreign conflicts to like legislate morality?
Yep.
yeah.
Because,
Well,
like-
that's Green Lantern 101. Like,
Right.
I mean, that's literally what he did at the beginning of the book, right? He's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give up my ring to come in here and bring peace because that's
Right.
what I do as an American.
yeah,
and who better to
That's
write
right
that?
As a lantern.
yeah.
What's great is with the Kyle Rayner arc though is that the conflict of his ethical duty, his moral duty, because like that's apparent throughout the entire story. On what is the right thing to do here, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And how
Or, like-
war kind of blurs that.
Or like, does he even have the? Is he even have the ability to even know what's right or wrong here? Like, this isn't really
Yeah.
his place, really, and he kind of has to fight with that too.
Like when he uses the blood to make the Omega Men symbol on his POW shirt thing.
Yeah.
So I want to jump in here real quick because I didn't get to say who my favorite character was. I really loved Callista. I thought she was so complex, but everyone was. And so that's like, even though she was my favorite, I had a connection to everybody. Even though when I started reading this, I was almost kind of repelled by how basic everyone appeared to be, just in terms of the way they looked and their names and everything like that. It was so different from what I'm used to reading out of comics, especially comics with a DC tag on them. And I was immediately like, I can see why this was canceled because this is not relatable.
I agree.
But the more you stick with it, like Scraps didn't become a relevant character for me until like the last issue 10. But by the time they kind of told her story, I fell in love, you know? And that was one of the things I really appreciated about this book and the way that Tom King approached it, which was everybody had their moments. Like everyone has a full story that's told here. It's just not told in the first issue, you know?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
like Tigor. I want to say Tigor.
Tigor, I think.
Tigor. Yeah.
Like we haven't touched on him, but like, you know, first glance, he's just the berserker of the group. He's like the Wolverine of the
Right.
group. He just fills this spot that you need to have on a superhero team.
I think he did that. That was all he did.
No, there's more to him though. Like there's
sure.
the
He was like the Krogan in Mass Effect. He just exists
Yeah.
there just to be
That's-
there.
but you got the
I think
story
he
with
was my
him and
favorite
his,
character,
and his father.
actually.
That was literally
He's-
the exact same story that happened
Is it
to
really?
In Mass Effect.
Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't played that, so
Well,
No,
his
I mean-
relationship with the Viceroy, like he
Yeah.
gives
Yeah.
depth to the Viceroy character, but then it also shows like his motives and why he's the way he is, and I really like that.
Yeah, I agree. I will say though, I think Matt's comparison is actually pretty apt. But I think like similar to that, like I think it's the same because like on the surface he is very much that kind of simple animalistic kind of character, but that there is depth there if you want to look for it.
Yeah.
It's like not so much about him though as it is about the Viceroy. Like to Phil's point, you know,
Okay.
his depth
Yeah, I
comes
can
from
see
other characters. I think.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I like that Sean brought up Jean Grey, because here's my question. This book was one of the first times that I saw a complete planet-wide genocide in DC that had nothing to do with the multiverse and it was contained. Now, the only character I've known that had done something similar to what the Viceroy had done was Jean Grey. Now, do you think in the end they killed the Viceroy? Do you think that character could have been redeemable in the way that Jean Grey was, or is he a complete monster? Can a character be truly evil, or is there possible redemption there?
I think
Do you mean for that character or for all characters?
That character specifically.
Okay.
I think the way the story is constructed and the way we see the Viceroy, he's someone who does things purely out of necessity. And it's hard for us to understand that as not pure evil because we come from a world that is very black and white. But the whole point of this story is that that doesn't really exist. That these characters are doing things because they have to. You look at Primus, who is this paragon of good. He's all about nonviolence, like all that good stuff. In the end, he ends up murdering people out of necessity, right? Kyle Rayner gives up his faith. I think the Viceroy is a character who probably was too far gone by the end of this story, maybe. But at the same time, his last speech is, "You guys hate me, but look at all that I've done for you." He has
that was a great moment.
Yeah, he has specific things that he did for every single one of those characters that in some way or another saved their lives and is the whole reason why they're there, able to kill him in the end. So, do I think he's redeemable? Maybe, but I definitely don't think he's pure evil, and I don't think that anyone in this book really is.
I mean, I think that was kind of the point, you know, is that the whole thing, right? Is like you want to make it this thing of black and white, of alpha and omega, but there is a third option, and you know, whatever you want to interpret that third option as being, I think, that to me seemed to be a major theme of the book.
Well, the big thing, I think, is every issue ends with a William James quote. And William James, his whole thing was like pragmatism of truth and pragmatism of faith. This guy who tried to like rationalize how truth is an objective thing in the face of this book that's like nothing but moral ambiguity.
Actually, now that you bring up the fact that there's quotes at the end of every issue, let's talk about like the actual form of the comic in this, and then at the end of the book, Tom King kind of says that this is like a tribute to the 9-panel grid, because just the idea. I mean, we got to talk about Barnaby Bagenda's art too, because I think it's really important to this.
I do want to say though, that was something that I remember. Like, I love the 9-panel grid. That's something that like I became a huge fan of because Robert Kirkman uses it a lot. And like when they got to that last part where they called it out, I was just like, oh man, yes! Like it's been this like entire thing.
You know it's working when you don't really realize it.
Yeah. Except I will say there's that one moment I wish I'd written down which issues they were in, but there's the one time where they still use the 9-panel, but instead of having it be straight, they have the layout of it kind of made into like almost like an omega symbol, where there's like one on the top and then the few in the middle, and it's spaced in a different way. And that was like the first time that I noticed the layout, but it was so like artfully done. I was like blown away by it. And there's that moment where you get the full look at Kyle in the
white lantern.
Yeah, the white lantern suit, but it's still broken up in the 9 panels. And I was like, oh my god.
Well, all the different colors of the lantern spectrum make up each panel.
Fucking, like, what a gorgeous image, man.
Yeah, I think a lot of DC and Marvel books don't utilize panel space super effectively nowadays. It's a little disappointing, but like when you have a book like Omega Men, you can tell that each panel is being utilized in an artistic and careful way.
Well, that's why they took so long to read, too. I don't know about you guys, but like, I remember I was like, oh, it's 12 issues. This is short, and it's like, it takes you a little bit to digest it.
Yeah.
One of the things speaking of this, like the last page where he's talking to like the galactic contact or whatever about whether or not he's going to war, and he's like, he talks about the grids and that they all look like hanging crosses, and it's a cage. They're all bars on a cage, and it's something savage and something civilized. And what I liked about that is when I was reading it last night, I was like, oh man, that whenever they use the 9-panel grid, like it's always when something incredibly violent is happening. But then I started noting the passive ones too, like when he turns in the White Lantern, he's just sitting, or when he's waiting for he's sitting behind a log and like whatever the tiger people are fighting
and he's like trying to get the ring to work again.
Yeah, like it's always just it's passive, it's war, it's a whole bunch of different things.
Guys, I just grew hair. Sorry.
But no, like I liked how it was war. There's so many different perspectives on like what war is and like who are warriors, who's the soldier, who are the casualties. And I think that last page like hit me really hard because they are savages, but they're civilians too.
Yeah, and I think Kyle's like interaction with the Viceroy, where he has that line where he says, I'm not afraid that I'll become one of them. I'm proud to count myself as one of them or among them or whatever. I thought like that ideal there of I guess just kind of, and it's echoed again when we see Primus address all the people of his world, I guess, and asking them to give up their souls and fight back. Is that kind of like dichotomy there, between like peace and the corruption of peace, but to stand up for something.
One of the other interesting, like, morally, like, things I noticed with the 9-pound grid was, like, every time they dealt with, he wasn't the mercenary guy, but the guy in the shady planet.
The guy who was like buying everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the merchant or whatever.
Where, like, they bought, like, millions of soldiers to fight this war. They weren't conscripted soldiers. They weren't about the cause. They were just there for the money.
Yeah.
And that reminded me a lot. When I went to California, for some reason, we talked a lot about the Iraq War.
What?
And we talked about the amount of mercenaries.
Because you only see desert when you're on your way to Vegas.
I was also with a lot of lawyers.
Good vacation talk.
Lawyers and someone who worked for the Department of Defense.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
And, like, it's basically, like, we used mercenaries in the war instead of actually, like, getting people.
Wait, so everyone's like, I'm a lawyer. Yeah, I'm working for the Department of Defense. I do a comic book podcast.
That's exactly what happened. But, like, there's no... A war's full of so many different people. And, like, if you look at the 9-panel grid, there's a different perspective or different shot from each thing. And you can see it so many different ways.
So one thing I also want to bring up, like, because you mentioned this to me before we recorded, how we both read this before the election, and then we just read it now again, and how, like, you had trouble reading it this time.
The genocide hit me hard.
Oh, I started it on like Wednesday or Thursday, just as Trump was signing all those executive orders.
Yeah.
And man, I got mad.
Yeah. This is not a happy read, but like it's an emotional read though, which I like about it.
Yeah.
It's very
certainly not a feel-good book.
No,
very
dude,
much
yeah.
Tom King in the sense that the fighting itself isn't actually like that important. Like I was just reading some of his Batman run, and in that he fights Bane. Batman fights Bane, and their fight is totally irrelevant. Basically, it's more about the emotion behind everything and the context of why they're fighting. And I very much got that feeling here as well, where it wasn't about the big explosions and it wasn't about the killing in the physical sense. It was about the killing in the emotional, spiritual sense. And I very rarely get the feelings that I got out of comic books with this one. You don't get writers who are so ready to kind of destroy themselves to tell a story. And especially when you realize that he's talking about personal experiences because he is a CIA agent or was in the Middle East. It's amazing how he was able to take 12 issues, take these characters, and tell a very, very personal story, but also a very culturally relevant story that I think isn't just relevant now, but has been relevant for all time. Because it's always been relevant how people have had to sacrifice their very souls, quite frankly, for what they personally believe is the greater good. And then when you look at it on a macro level, it's like, is this the greater good? What are you sacrificing yourself for? Because ultimately, this could be for nothing, or it could really be the wrong choice. So it's just amazing. Like you look at how they sacrifice themselves to kill or to stop the Viceroy, only to end up with another one. And that person being the very person that they were fighting side by side with the entire time. How do they feel now? You know? Like, how does Primus feel knowing that he sacrificed his soul only to put in place this person who just wanted to be the Viceroy? You know?
Well,
like,
and even worse for him to become everything that he hated, become the dictator of his own world, and be the one killing peaceful protesters.
And it's seemingly to embrace that,
And the person who does it is someone who's like in love with too.
Yeah.
Which is like another layer to it. And
well, and I think also shown that she never really loved him.
Yeah,
that it was just another manipulation for him to give up his values.
Yeah, and then Tom King manages to do this in 12 issues and still make it a like cool comic book. Like you still have the comic book
supposed
parts.
to be an ongoing.
Yeah, and I think it's almost better like this though.
I was gonna
I
say
agree.
that. Yeah, I think he was better served by DC putting the cap on it because it needed to be this tight. I think, for sure.
Yeah.
I actually kind of.
Well, so I.
Oh wait.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, you can go ahead, Cal.
I was gonna say I don't know, like it may have been ongoing, but like with the conflict that sort of seems like they're gonna address, like it seems like that conflict was gonna come to Earth, and then we would get to see like the American like response to all of this, and I think that would also be kind of interesting.
I think
Maybe they did explore that in other books. I don't know.
we might get that in Vendivi's Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern books.
I mean,
Yeah.
also Tom King is exclusive to DC now.
yeah, but his
Yeah.
next book, they're really pushing the fact that him and Mitch Gerards are going to be doing Legion next. Like that,
No shit.
yeah, because they have a 12 issue, they have a
Buddy.
12 issue series coming out together that starts in like August. Like they're taking a break from Sheriff Volume 2 to do a DC book.
Oh man,
So
I might actually read a Legion book.
yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Yo, Legion is my jam.
but my thing about this is I like that Tom King does these 12 issue maxi series things.
Like Vision. you want them to,
Vision, Sheriff Babylon, this like, I like that he's a storyteller. Like I don't need the fluff. I don't need the fill-in issues with fill-in artists. Like I like that we just got a story that needed to be told, and if he comes back to it, he comes back to it. I know.
Yeah.
One of my current favorite books right now is Adam Hughes' Betty and Veronica. It's just relevant.
Very similar to this one. Yeah.
So there are huge delays between each issues because it takes him like a
'Cause it's
while
Adam
to
Hughes.
draw. Yeah, but like every time I pick up the issue, it's worth waiting for. With Tom King, if he does these maxi series like every few years and there's gaps in between the story, I won't mind because I know it's going to continue to be quality work. Whereas I don't want to see 7 years of Jess Johns' Justice League and then have all these tie-in issues that I don't need to see. Like I trust that Tom King's going to give us quality work, even if there are breaks between it.
I could not agree with you more, man. I mean, I bark up that tree on our show all the time where I just like I really love contained stories like this because there is just like there's a point, and then we got the point and we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing. Like
I think
and to Sean's earlier point, I think if they had dragged it out and actually allowed it to be an ongoing series, that it would have suffered.
And I think that's what they're kind of doing with this Batman run in a bit. Like he's getting split between arcs with different artists, and like those arcs are kind of standalone. At least the most recent 2 arcs were, where you can kind of read them in small chunks, and they're good as they'd be good as a trade. Like even
that was
with
like
Finch.
that was my concern with his Batman was that he's really benefited
boy.
from.
Philly.
Wait, Phil, you cut out. Start over.
What?
You're good. You're good
Sorry.
now. You're good now.
That was my concern with Batman with him is that it wouldn't be contained because like obviously with Justice League and the Omega Men there's a huge difference. Justice League is like DC's big property.
And it's
So
always
Batman-
garbage.
Sure, but with Batman, another huge property, I was worried that maybe it was too big for Tom King. I think Sean would agree that he's handled it pretty well.
Yeah.
But with something like a Mega Man, you can easily make it a compact, self-contained story, which is not really a luxury you have with Justice League typically.
But I wonder. Sorry, I wonder what would have happened if he could have had 12 more issues.
I think it's you kind of always think that whenever one of these series ends, but I feel like one of the problems with Western storytelling is that people don't know when to let things go.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
Yep.
Very true.
this
Spider-Man.
is one of those books where it's like I'm so glad that someone had restraint. Someone somewhere, whether it was because it wasn't selling or whatever the reasoning is, like, I'm glad that I can sit with this now. Like, I was able to read it, 12 issues. Now I sit with it, all the emotions, everything it's made me feel, and that's it. If I want to think about where it goes in the future, I can think about that, but the story is told,
Yeah, and
I'm really appreciative of that.
And now this is something.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, for the people on my show, I've been thumping this book for like a year, obviously, and now all 3 of you have read it. How do you feel about it in the context of other books over the last 2 years?
I can definitely see why you feel it's the best book of what did you say, 2015, 2016?
2015, yeah.
I understand why you feel that way. I don't. Part of it is because I didn't read it when it was coming out. I really need to have that experience, and I didn't. And I'm kicking myself for that, but it is what it is. Also, it's a fantastic read. It's not easy to read. The first 3 issues, I had no clue what was going on. I really didn't. I didn't know anything, and I'm actually glad for that because it was tough. It forced me to actually put effort into the reading and not just kind of spoon feeding me all the info. And I do like that, but it made my actual reading experience in the beginning just a little bit jarring. In a way that, it kind of takes away from it in the beginning, but it pays off later.
Yeah.
So do I feel like it's the best book that was being published at that time period? Not necessarily, but I think it's amazing, and I'm gonna cherish the fact that I read it, and I'm gonna read it again, for sure.
Yeah, I think
if I can go next.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I largely agree with Sean. No surprise there if you're a fan of our show.
I am.
I think
you guys shit talk DC too much. Also, ever since Phil did the Grant Morrison impression, I just hear this weird Cockney accent every time he speaks, and it haunts me at work. Haunts me.
I was just about to mention Grant Morrison too.
The worst part is Grant Morrison's Scottish, and that's not what Phil does. Is not Scottish at all.
Nope.
And by the way, if that accent haunts you, Matt, don't listen to the next episode.
Oh God, yeah. But yeah, so to take it back to Omega Men, yeah, I mean, I would largely agree with Sean. I'm glad I read the book. The only thing I would say I really largely disagree with what you said is I'm actually glad I didn't read it when it was coming out because I think the first 3 issues would have lost me.
Yeah.
Because I really, again, I'm with you. I didn't know what was going on. I got really annoyed by the 3rd issue where I was just like, I still don't understand what am I supposed to be caring about here yet? And, I am glad that I stuck with it, but I think if we hadn't been reading it in preparation for this show, I don't know if I would have finished it, So take that for what it is, I guess, as like a criticism of the pacing, but I do think that it's well worth sticking out for those 3 slow issues because where it goes is way, way worth it. I would say agree with Sean. I don't know if I would say it was the best or one of the best books that I read in 2015, but especially because I didn't read it in 2015. But I'm really glad I did read it, and it was something that was very different than what I normally read, and it was a great palate cleanser. And I would definitely recommend it to other people who like, if you like cosmic comics or if you like comics that deal with some of these more broad themes like war and things like that. I think it's a must read.
This was a palate cleanser? What kind of dark shit do you read? Wow.
I was just about to say, if you're a fan of Mouse, pick up Omega Men.
Did you say you're a fan of Mouse?
I like Mouse.
I love Mouse.
No, I mean, but I just feel like, I'm a fan of Mouse. I loved the content. I feel like you just gotta say, I appreciate Mouse as a great comic and how it breaks the walls of comics. Or you can't just say, I loved Mouse. It was
that fucking Mouse guy, yeah.
You never see anybody in a Mouse shirt, is what he's
That's
saying.
true. Yeah, you don't.
Oh God.
I fanboy like crazy over Mouse.
It's got a mouse tattoo, bro. I'm a real big fan. Real big fan.
You should read my Mouse fan fiction.
Oh shit. Fuck.
Oh,
you know what? I was reading this and I was thinking last night a great companion piece to read after this or at the same time would be Greg Pak's Magneto Testament.
Nice.
Oh God, I'm so glad you just brought that up.
Yeah.
I just fucking love Magneto Testament.
Good. Or what about Red Skull Incarnate? Did you read that one?
Red Skull
A
Incarnate
little different.
is not
a
as
little bit
good.
the same.
I love that.
Oh, yeah, I like that one too. Yeah, that one's creepy as shit.
I love Testament. Testament is a book I recommend to people who are familiar with superheroes but don't read comic books.
Mm-hmm.
To give them a taste of just being well, this is the other flavor of what stories about superheroes can be about.
This is what's going to happen under Donald Trump.
Wait, mutants?
Who knows? They just made a human pig person.
Oh, they did. They did. Which brings us back to Mouse.
What?
Wait, you didn't hear
We're
about the
still talking about
government created a human pig hybrid.
Or a chimera, as they're called. they were able
Are
to
you
grow
serious?
human lungs inside a pig.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are we doing, man?
I think it's pretty cool.
Are we still talking about Trump?
I think so.
I don't know anymore.
I don't
know sort of.
I don't know where Matt's tangent went.
Happy Hunger Games.
Notice how before we started the show, I was like, if we go off tangents, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
When
why.
I think of the Viceroy, I kind of actually think of Donald Trump.
If you
I
change him to
sympathize
orange
with the
instead of
Viceroy
purple,
on some
I
level.
think his hands were too
Yeah, I
big.
was gonna say I don't know. I sympathize with him on some level, so I don't know about that.
Yeah, I agree with him on aspects. So
Yeah, like the Viceroy did what he had to. I firmly believe that.
Or I
Because
think, or at least he did what he felt he had to.
Yeah,
whether or not he always had to.
Everyone ultimately does, but like when you look at how the Galactic Council came down on him when they knew that they didn't have the what was it called, Stellarium?
Yeah.
Could you imagine if you knew that the whole weight of the entire galaxy A, rested on your shoulders, but B, was going to come down on you if you didn't play ball? That's
Right.
crazy. He did exactly what he had to do, because if he didn't do that, not only was he going to die, but all those billions of people were going to die anyway, and for nothing.
Yeah, and it does seem like, to his credit, I do believe that it seemed he tried to act as altruistically as he could when he was presented opportunities. Like he could have killed Tigor or, whatever, left him there to die, but he didn't. He could have shut down the peaceful protesters, but he didn't. And it does seem like he tried to do some good, whether or not it was always effective.
I like that it was a cause and effect thing. Like this was the whole genocide of what happened on. It was Voral or Vorpal. Voral. What happened on Voral was the result of what happened on Krypton. Like it was
Yeah.
fear. They watched one of the greatest races in all of the galaxy get destroyed from ignorance and like the inaction.
which is a great use of just being in the DC universe at that point, which I loved. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like it was all based in fear. Like when you're afraid and you have the option to do something to save millions of lives, what would you do?
Build a wall.
Oh God.
Well, I think to Matt's point, it becomes a thing of us versus them, and if it's, do we save us, the Citadel, the civilization, or them, the savages, the natives, the animals, whatever it's easy to justify atrocities when it's your people or your civilization on the line.
I don't
sounds
know, guys.
eerily-
It's hard to sympathize
now-
with this dude. In the second issue, he orders 3,900 executions because 39 Citadel soldiers died when they tried to capture the Omega
yeah,
Man.
you're-
This
okay,
dude is an utter piece of shit. He's a fascist.
I mean, he's
Fascist.
definitely a fascist, but I think when you're living in that world, it's just different, and I think it's very hard for us to understand. If he doesn't do that, what's the result? Is it gonna be that, okay, well, hey, they didn't do anything, so we can do whatever the fuck we please? Is that how it works there? We don't know because we don't live there, but it certainly seems like this is the kind of guy who is gonna rule with an iron fist. Like, I don't want to get too much in the weeds with real life allegories, but you look at Saddam Hussein. He was always mentioned as he does these things not because he loves it, although he probably did, but because he had to keep his people in line. He needed to take a hard line because the guy behind him was way, way worse, and he was holding everything together. I look at the Viceroy very much like that.
After Saddam Hussein died, the whole region fell into like black market regional chaos, and like countries like Pakistan and India were really upset with the United States because they're like, well, now it's all fucking chaos. To Sean's point, I was reinforcing it.
Which is really funny when you bring up Saddam Hussein because
Wait, really funny when you bring
Real
up Saddam
funny.
it's not
That's
funny.
a scary segue, Matt. That's a scary segue.
If you read Tom King's Sheriff of Babylon, Tom King and Mitch Gera's Sheriff of Babylon, it is a direct response to what the Middle East is going through after Saddam Hussein was killed.
Oh,
So-
wow.
So there's his trilogy.
I think, like, if you look at it there, like, Omega Men is what happened during the war, Sheriff of Babylon's what happened after the war, and Vision's what happens when he got home.
Yeah, they call
Wow.
it the King is Black trilogy or something. The internet does.
Yeah.
'Cause they say like all three books kind of tie together. I haven't read Sheriff of
genius,
Babylon
too,
yet, so
yeah.
I can't weigh in on that. But I've seen people posit that idea.
Sheriff Babylon is one of the hardest books I've had to read. It's harder to read than Omega Men, but it's also because it's real and not space.
I mean, one thing we haven't touched on is the art. Anyone have anything particular to say about Barnaby Bagenda? Because I thought he was phenomenal.
Who did the colors?
Matt, look it up. Matt, look it up.
The colors were Romulo Fajardo Jr. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name.
Give me it.
Tamu Mori and Hi-Fi.
Tamo Mori. Yeah, I just did the same thing. and Hi-Fi. Yeah.
Give me that. Wait, that was right.
Yeah.
I thought, for me, I think the colors were the thing that stuck out to me the most about the art. I thought there was really, really good use of color in general, and that a lot of the scenes, especially where there was a lot of things going on, the use of color was done in a way that, like, your eye always went to where you were supposed to be. And I never felt, like, overwhelmed by, like, even the scenes of, like, a massive, battle scene or, like, mass carnage or whatever. And that was, I think, the thing that stuck out to me the most for sure. So I want to give a particular shout out to that.
I think the 9-panel grid really helped with that. Like, you have the like I wanted to point out earlier, the page right after they kill the Viceroy. You can almost just feel, like, their heartbeats and the time that's passing, and Callista walks away and the rest of them are just there with their, like, sacrifice morals, and they're just staring at the body, and then Kyle's the only one left. So, like, I wanted to bring this up while we were talking about the 9-panel grid, but do you guys think, I mean, obviously Watchmen has an influence on it. Watchmen has an influence of everything. How do you feel, I don't really know how to ask this question. How do you feel Watchmen, like, influenced this? Like, obviously it was based on, Tom King's, like, real war experience, but, like, thinking about it, there's more to it.
Yeah, no, I had the Watchmen feel here. Almost.
Okay.
As soon as I started noticing the paneling,
I
was like, okay, I'm starting to feel it. Where in Watchmen, they can take a moment and span it out into 9 panels. It really kind of punches that moment, which I think was used here very well. As opposed to, like any other comic, they would just do a big splash of what's going on here. This shows you the reactions and breaks down that one particular moment in time. Very.
My thing, so I really want to comment this, but I'll admit I haven't read Watchmen since I was in high school. Like,
That should be yearly reading.
my yearly reading is Fables, but so my thing with this is that, like, what I liked about it was
is that because it takes you a year, or
I just like it that much.
You like talking pigs. What can you say? That's why you read Mouse.
I like talking pigs. That's why I like Kellyanne Conway.
Hi-oh.
Oh my god.
Yeah, sorry.
Jesus.
What I like about this, and going back to Pete's color thing, was when if you look at Watchmen, you look at Watchmen is a book of its era. It used, I forget what it was, like the basic colors it used.
yeah.
Whereas this was so expansive, like this, you can tell this is a book of its era. And I liked how, like, it may have not be like, it may be influenced by it, like whatever story-wise, art-wise, but like color-wise, I think it shows just how evolved we have come in graphic novels and comics in general. Like, it shows how much we can tell with color, how much we can tell with panels, and like it shows that we can only get better from here. If the New York Times actually keeps us on the bestsellers list.
But yeah, to Tyler's point earlier, something that I thought was really well done was how often the book let a moment just kind of breathe. I think the thing that immediately came to mind when you were describing the idea of, like, letting a moment happen over a few panels was that scene at the end of one of the books where the Omega Men are all, like, celebrating the victory and everybody's, like, sharing jokes back and forth, and we just see Kyle kind of, like, walking away into the distance. That moment, like, really, really landed well for me for that moment. They're all celebrating this victory while he's, like, forced to really reconcile what he's become a part of,
Yeah. All right. So that was happy read, guys. It's a real.
For Pete, it was a palate cleanser.
Yeah, exactly. So, Pete, what are you reading? Are you just reading like snuff film scripts or something?
No, I like it's funny because like I just am reading Injustice: Gods Among Us right now, which
That's
is
a little
like
dark.
also super fucking dark and gritty and awful.
That's where
That book's amazing. I love it.
They kill pregnant Lois.
Oh my
Lane.
god, I love it so much, man.
That's such a Matt book.
Yeah. I was buying them all digitally, and then I just gave up, and I'm like, I just gotta go buy them in paperback now. I need them.
I love the memes that have spawned from that, like just the weird Batman reaction face in the background, sort of thing. Or
from the Joker
or the
thing where it's like,
yeah.
I like I know Chris Sabella's doing the current comic where it's like a prequel
Yeah.
or whatever, and
Yeah.
it's full of my favorite murder references because
What
he's
in the
such a
world?
huge fan.
Matt, if only you had a
My
shirt
favorite
for.
murder references.
Yeah. I'm wearing my favorite murder shirt right now. It says "fuck politeness."
That's rude.
Never rude. Fuck Donald Trump.
Well, I guess we'll just wrap it up from there after you just said that, Matt. I want to thank you guys for being on the show. Do you guys
Thanks for having us.
want to plug?
Yeah.
Matt, don't say butt plug. You guys want to plug anything?
Our show.
butt.
The Comics
I
Pals.
mean-
We put out a new episode every Monday on iTunes and SoundCloud, every Tuesday on YouTube. You can find us on there. You can also check us out on Twitter and Instagram at The Comics Pals, and you can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. So check us out, guys.
Ooh, send them emails because I sent you guys one email and then I'm like, I can't do this every week, but I have responses to every single episode.
Matt, you
appreciate
can
it.
send one every week. We'll at least read them.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. Cool.
Wait, you
Wait,
can follow us.
Oh, yeah.
at the Longbox Podcast.
Right,
If
what's
they're
this show
watching
called?
They probably know where we are.
Yeah, that's true. You can follow us at the Longbox Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. Don't add us individually. That's weird.
You can add me.
Don't.
Don't.
You can find
don't
us
do
on
that.
SoundCloud, iTunes. We're gonna be on YouTube eventually.
This
but-
might be on YouTube. Probably will be.
Oh, I've been
Yeah.
scratching my beard this whole time. That's weird. TheLongboxPodcast.com. We're on Tumblr, but I still don't know what the user handle is, so womp womp. And we're on that other podcast service we never remember the name for.
Stitcher?
Is it Spreaker or Stitcher?
Stitcher. I tried Spreaker. Wasn't feeling Spreaker.
I feel like that's the noise a hamster makes when they're having sex.
Can you espouse on that?
No, I think that's where I'm going to end it, actually.
Spreak.
Yeah, I'm ending it there. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next month, hopefully. Cool. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.